A very good day to all. I trust this session finds you doing well. Now, first and foremost, I will kindly have to remind you to subscribe to this channel in order for it to grow, which wouldn't be so ironic given that this channel is about growth. Not only for you guys, but for me as well. Because I can feel myself growing deeper into this role. It's not really a role though, it's just expression of experience as life. This is my truth. This is the way I view the world, right? As the name of the channel suggests, it's a quick thought. My quick thought, because I have so many. And so I thought I should reserve some time to sharing some of those thoughts as life experience, to life experience, because that's what we are. Although there's this common misconception pertaining to experience, what it means for most people at least, or most of us have come to the understanding that experience is something which has passed. It's memory which we can source inspiration from, which, by the way, is a fallacy, because the reality is, in fact, the opposite of that. Experience is always happening. Experience is now. You're not experiencing life as in like external reality. What you're experiencing right now is merely yourself within reality or as reality. Because should you die or should you pass on, there is no reality as far as you as the individual is concerned. And now, with that being said, I will dive into today's topic of discussion. It's about systems. There's this notion, or rather should I say, it's no new idea that we exist within a system. Hence, you tend to hear people say things like, oh, the system is broken. Which, by the way, is not even the case. The system is functioning efficiently. The system essentially is made for automation. Like all systems, systems are rigid, especially man-created systems, right? They are contained within a certain framework, and it never changes, which is for the life experience, for the human life experience, it defeats the whole purpose of life experience, because life, the system of reality is contained within its own laws, yes, but it's very flexible, it's subtle, right? It's so subtle that we often don't feel it happening, although we can see it happening, right? And so, for most of us, in fact, I'd say all of us, when we are born into this system. Not really born into the system, but we are born and then indoctrinated. We are placed under a system, which in its most fundamental aspect is hierarchy. And most of us are born right at the bottom, where reality is patterned in a particular way, in a specific way, more particularly for the black folk. And now I'm speaking from memory, right? From trauma, because this is something that I've seen myself. This is something I can attest to, confidently so, because I've been observing. I'm naturally observant. I don't know why. Perhaps this is the reason. The reason perhaps was for me to relay what I've observed. Right. And so the way of the system is to imprint itself within the human being. And there's different levels to the system, right? Given that it's actually a hierarchy. I mean, people born in the suburbs will grow differently compared to people born in the townships, right? There's different dynamics involved. So, depending on the environment, one will grow as the environment, as the system of that environment, or at least the part of the system which is running that environment. And basically, what happens is that you get conditioned to that environment, and eventually you become the environment because it's all you see. You are taught that you are what you have experienced, and so your sense of self is tied to what you've experienced externally, which is the process of imprinting the system within your mind, therefore systemizing your being, which again defeats the whole purpose of experience as life, because life is flexible. Shit is always happening. There's never a time when life is not moving. It's freezing or it's glitching, then it moves again. Nah, but for us, we are most of the time we are tied to a past. We are just living out a past experience, basically, or a past version of ourselves, which is why things don't change. We've been systemized. We've been conditioned. The system is in us and us in it. Therefore, it's easier for us to identify with it, and completely hard, completely difficult for us to perceive a life experience beyond the ways of the system, which is a strong possibility. It's basically one living as oneself, one living naturally, as opposed to confining one's being to the limitations imposed by the system, because again, the system is built in hierarchies. There's different levels to it. And depending on the level that you are on, you will be subject to, to a particular amount of knowledge. And for us, most black folk, it's very limited. We don't even know that we are, or we can dictate the flow of experience. We are not taught such things. We are not told that there's power in breath and breathing properly, growing up, which is a basic of life, as life. I do apologize for that inconvenience. The main switch tripped, hence I had to pause the video. But basically, the idea which I was getting to is the fact that we are blindsided as a particular people, and there's different levels of being blindsided, depending again on the level of hierarchy you are existing on. So for us normal black folks, it's really made difficult. We are trapped within one adverse situation which is all it is. Because they knew, I don't know who knew, but someone knew that eventually we will make it a way of life to internalize everything. So we've come to a point whereby we unconsciously and automatically internalize struggle, adversity, poverty, because it's all we see. We are based within environments of lack. And so it's hard for us to dream big. It's hard for us to exist freely. It's hard for us to flourish and thrive within supportive communities because now it's survival of the fittest, right? Because we are all struggling. We are all trying to survive, which defeats the purpose of life again, because life is about living. And because of how the system is so deeply ingrained in us, we don't recognize the fact we've in a sense become the system or the level of system which we were subjected to. And so we are trapped in this dilemma of unconsciousness, which is the restriction that we experience as struggle, because life is supposed to flow a certain way. In fact, not even in a specific way, but life is just supposed to flow, and you as mind have the capacity to direct the flow of life's current. But now we often pin ourselves to a certain moment in time, or to a certain place, or to a certain memory, or to certain ideologies, which keep us stuck in past ways of experiencing ourselves as life. And this inner conflict is detrimental to our well-being in many ways. Hence we get things like violence. Hence we get people killing each other for small monies. So the amount of money won't even matter in such a situation, because again, the point is to survive. It's survival of the fittest. We live basically in hell. Because for us, most black folk, well, more specifically within these townships of ours, more especially if you are located within South Africa, right? You will understand what I'm talking about. It's chaotic. The system is designed as chaotic for us, but this chaos happens within a very small box, which is insane. Hence, it drives us insane. Hence, we feel as though we don't have the freedom to be ourselves. Hence, we view kindness as a weakness. And so, what's the solution? You might be wondering, do I have a solution? Well, life is the solution. But then I guess you will have to detach. And I know there's this, again, common misconception of what the word detachment means. Most people view it as detaching from the world, not caring about the world. Nah, that's not what it's about. Essentially, detachment in its natural meaning, if I may say that, is to detach from your mind identification with the world, with reality. Because the world is not as you think it to be, although it can appear that way. In fact, whatever you think of the world, if you think of the world will be that way for you, right? But it doesn't depend upon your thinking for it to be. The world will always be, regardless of what you think of it. And so, Detachment essentially means detaching from your mind identification with the world and detaching your beingness from mind, from the preconceived notions which you have formulated about yourself, which will ultimately reflect in how you experience the outer world. Because there is no real difference between you and there. How you experience there depends heavily or entirely rather to how you experience yourself. Hence, you can get two people in the same situation, one content and the other discontent. It's not really because of the situation, but because of the way they've come to relate to the world as individual being. So detachment is the key. Because once you detach from mind or from the identification you have with mind with regards to experience or the experience of reality, then what's left is just reality happening. You're basically left in the unknown, which is something we've been taught, something which we've been programmed to fear, which again defeats the whole purpose of experience, because experience is to experience something is to experience the unknown. Because once you're caught within the bubble of familiarity with regards to knowing what you experience or what you want to experience, then your experience of self will be confined to that bubble, right? And so to open yourself to the unknown is basically enhancing your experience, because now you are open. You are not polluting your sense of self with any familiar experiences. And that being the case, the chances are way less, are dropped significantly. Chances of you getting addicted to a certain lifestyle or to a certain identity, which is only an idea which you have of yourself, right? And as to how that idea was formed, many factors could play a hand in that formation, or in the formation of the self-image which you've built up, the personality which you identify with. You know, the way you were raised, or where you were raised, the friends you had, the things that you watched. All these things play a role in the identity that you form, right? But life is not about, like, you don't have to identify yourself with things within reality, but know that you are alive, and experience is in the unknown. Because to know is not to know, because once you know, you've limited yourself to what you can remember, and so fear what you don't remember. I mean, you might once in a while make a sudden breakthrough, but it pales in comparison to what is possible, to the potential which is inherent and which can be realized by you if you were to allow reality, allow experience to flow within the unknown, because that's how you get to know. Hence, I always say to know is not to know. And I guess one of our biggest challenge within a or living within a particular system is that or is the constant need to be validated. And we feel this need because we haven't accepted ourselves, not the ideas which we formed about ourselves, ideas which we've come to identify with. No, no, no. What I'm referring to is one's self as life, as being, as the vibrancy of experience, the source which fuels the idea. Because you can be whatever you want to be, right? But for most people now, it's become a thing of limiting oneself to a certain idea of oneself and existing as that self in every situation, which defeats the purpose. Just be whatever the moment requires you to be. That's how, well, at least that's how I've been. I don't know why, but I've always had this sense of separation, which was really involvement in the context, in the bigger context of things, right? I've always had this underlying sense of inclusivity as far as experience was concerned. Hence, for the most part of my existence, I was mainly observant as opposed to claiming my knowingness. I've always been a student of life. For some weird reason, right? I've always had the insatiable need to learn as opposed to being validated. Well, I guess there was a time when I wanted to be acknowledged. But this was because I hadn't accepted myself, my natural aspect of being. And now with that established, I don't need validation, because the need for validation naturally stems from the fact that deep down, you know that you're not being yourself. Hence, the role that you're playing needs approval, needs validation from other people playing other roles. It's like, how am I doing? Yeah, you're doing great. Because it's all a fallacy. It's not, the way we lead life is not rooted in reality. It's that simple, really.